and were true war encounters. Full story. How Sniper White Feather and his Winchester Model 70, Quiet Horizon, saved a convoy under crossfire. The field phone rattled at Firebase Delta at 0804 hours, January 19, 1967. Captain John Thorson lifted the receiver and heard Lieutenant Morrison's voice through static. 18 supply trucks pinned on Route 9, 12 kilometers west of Khe Sanh. 200 Marines trapped in a horseshoe ambush where 3 ridges converged like the fingers of a closing fist. "Sir, we've been stopped 43 minutes. NVA machine guns on all 3 ridges. Overlapping fields of fire. Fog's too thick for air. Artillery can't touch them without leveling the valley." Thorson stared at the topographic map spread across plywood under fluorescent light that made everyone look dead. His doctrine was simple, repeated in every field manual since Bellow Wood. Suppress the enemy with overwhelming firepower, then maneuver. But the fog had grounded the phantoms. The ridges negated artillery angles, and Morrison's voice carried the edge of a man counting minutes until his trucks became coffins. "How long can you hold?" "Maybe 90 minutes. After that, we're out of ammo and options." Thorson reached for the phone to call in reaction teams, M60s and grenade launchers, maximum violence, maximum noise, when Lance Corporal Davies spoke from the tent entrance. "Sir, White Feather's here." The name hung in the air like cordite. Carlos Hathcock, 23 years old, Arkansas drawl, white feather tucked in his boonie hatband, 93 confirmed kills across rice paddies and jungle canopy. But what made commanders nervous wasn't his record, it was his rifle. Hathcock stepped into the operations tent carrying Quiet Horizon, a Winchester Model 70 in 30-06 Springfield, a civilian hunting rifle that belonged on a deer stand in Montana, not a firebase in I-Corps. Commercial Lunertal 10x scope with target knobs, Woodstock dark with cosmolin and sweat, trigger that broke at exactly 2 pounds 4 ounces. Armorers hated it, staff sergeants questioned it. The rifle violated procurement regulations and represented everything the modern military was supposed to have outgrown. Individual craft over mass production, patience over suppression, silence over shock. Hathcock studied the map for 11 seconds, traced elevation contours with one finger, then said, "Don't need to suppress them all, sir. Just need to remove the linchpins. Doctrine said you couldn't solve a 3-ridge ambush with one rifle." Hathcock was suggesting exactly that. "You're talking about 400 meters through fog and wind. 470 to the western position." I checked the range card already. Thorson had spent 6 years trusting doctrine. But Morrison had 90 minutes, and doctrine wasn't answering the phone. Take Davies as spotter, report every shot. 18 minutes later, Hathcock was belly down on a rocky outcrop north of the convoy. Quiet Horizon's bipod locked against basalt, still radiating morning heat. Through the Unertal's narrow field of view, the world compressed into fractions, wind value, mirage boil, the microscopic tremor of vegetation betraying the PKM's position. The Winchester had been his father's deer rifle, modified by a Little Rock gunsmith who understood that precision wasn't about military specifications. Hathcock had learned every click by feel, every correction by memory. His breathing dropped to 4 breaths per minute, and he waited for the enemy to make the smallest mistake. Doctrine said didn't matter. Part 2. At Firebase Delta, Sergeant Hayes stood beside the map table with cold coffee, watching Thorson stare at the radio. "You really think one sniper can break a 3-ridge ambush?" Hathcock's never missed when it counted. With a civilian rifle, the Corps didn't issue, didn't test, didn't approve. Hayes was right. Quiet Horizon violated every standardization principle. No spare parts in supply. No armorer could service that Unertal scope. The 30-06 ammunition wasn't even standard issue. Hathcock hand-loaded every round himself, weighing powder charges to the 10th of a grain, seating bullets to within. Udro 1 inch of concentricity. But Thorson had read the after-action reports. The man didn't miss. On the outcrop, Davies pressed flat beside Hathcock with a spotting scope. 3 to 4 minutes wind value, left to right. Mirage says it's gusting. The PKM gunner opened up at 8:47 hours. 12-round burst into the convoy's lead truck, shift, reload, 12-round burst again. Hathcock watched the rhythm. Third cycle, the shoulder appeared in the gap. 4 seconds, maybe less. He'd loaded this round 3 days ago in his hooch at Firebase Alpine. 168 grains Sierra Match King hollow point, 44.5 grains, IMR 4064 powder, seated .010 inch off the rifling lands. The round was designed to cross 470 meters in 0.6 of a second and print inside a 2-inch circle if Hathcock did his part. The trigger broke with a sound like a dry twig snapping. Through the scope, the gunner's shoulder snapped backward. The PKM went silent. Davies confirmed without emotion. Hit. Guns quiet. The second twist came 90 seconds later, exactly as Hathcock had predicted. NVA doctrine said when one position falls, the others compensate with increased fire. Both remaining machine guns opened up with sustained bursts, trying to pin the convoy from 2 sides instead of 3. But Hathcock had counted on this response. Increased rate of fire meant faster barrel heating, which meant more mirage distortion rising from the guns, which meant he could read their exact positions through atmospheric shimmer alone. "I've got both positions logged," he said quietly, adjusting for crosswind that had picked up as fog lifted. He moved 40 meters east to a second outcrop, changing his angle so neither remaining gunner could backtrack his shot. At 9:04, he took the North Ridge gun. Not the gunner, but the ammunition bearer crouched in a spider hole, feeding belts into the PKM. The shot entered just above the collarbone. Suddenly, the machine gun had ammunition for maybe 90 more seconds before going dry. The crew panicked, broke cover to retrieve spare belts from a secondary cache. A Marine M60 team, finally able to see the position, finished what Hathcock had started. 2 guns down, 1 remaining. Route 9 was starting to breathe again. Warnham Part 3. The last machine gun crew on the South Ridge realized they were being systematically dismantled by something they couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't counterattack. Their suppressive fire became erratic, desperate. Long bursts, wasting ammunition on shadows and empty road. Hathcock watched them through the unearthly scope, reading panic in the gun's rhythm. He didn't need to kill them. He just needed them to believe they were already dead. The psychological twist was surgical. He fired 1 round into the sandbags 12 inches from the gunner's head, the impact spraying red dirt across the man's face and neck. 20 seconds later, enough time for the gunner to think he'd been spared, Hathcock put another round through the ammunition can beside the position. 3 belts of 7.62 K54R detonated in a magnesium-white flash that sent the crew scrambling south into jungle, abandoning the gun entirely. "South position abandoned," Davies reported. "Convoy has clear corridor." At 09:21 hours, the trucks were rolling again. Total time pinned, 68 minutes. Total rounds fired by Hathcock, 4. Total enemy killed or displaced from fighting positions, 11. Not one Marine in the convoy ever saw him, never knew that a single man with a civilian hunting rifle had quietly unraveled an ambush designed to destroy them all. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio at Firebase Delta, relief and confusion mixing in equal measure. "Sir, I don't know what happened. West gun went silent, then north, then south crew just ran. We're mobile, ETA Khe-Sanh, 23 minutes. Thorson hung up the phone and looked at Hayes, who was staring at the map like it had just contradicted every field manual he'd ever read. "One rifle just did what a platoon with M60s couldn't have done in twice the time. That's not how it's supposed to work, sir." "No, it's not. The doctrine was clear, had been clear since World War II. You solved complex ambushes with combined arms. Air support, artillery, mechanized infantry, overwhelming firepower applied from multiple axes. The idea that one precision rifle could achieve what 3 platoons couldn't violated the entire post-Korea military philosophy. Quiet Horizon wasn't just a gun, it was a philosophical rebuke to the McNamara-era belief that wars were won through industrial volume and statistical attrition. When Hathcock returned to Firebase Delta 90 minutes later, he cleaned the Winchester in silence, while other Marines watched from respectful distance. The ritual was always the same: bore snake through barrel, patches until white, light coat of CLP on the bolt, scope covers back on. The rifle had fired 4 rounds and saved 200 lives, and Hathcock treated it with the same quiet care he always did. A young Marine, fresh in country maybe 3 weeks, finally worked up courage to ask, "Corporal Hathcock, why don't you just use an M40 like the other snipers?" Hathcock looked up from the cleaning patch, considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. M40's a fine rifle, accurate, reliable, parts everywhere, but Quiet Horizon and me, we've been together since before the Corps. I know exactly what this rifle will do at any range, any condition, any time. That's worth more than a manual says it should be. Do you think you'd trust the official methods, or trust what your own hands and eyes tell you works? Comment which side you'd choose, and share this episode with someone who loves real human stories from history. Part 4. 3 days after Route 9, word spread quietly through Acor. Not through official channels. Captain Thorson's after-action report used careful, technical language that made the engagement sound like standard sniper support, but through the network of grunts and squad leaders who'd heard Morrison's Marines talking about the convoy that shouldn't have survived. At Camp Carroll, a Marine sniper requested permission to carry his personal Remington 700. At Firebase Vandergrift, another asked the armourer about fitting unertl scopes. At Da Nang, the conversation in Scout Sniper School shifted slightly, instructors grudgingly admitting the manual didn't cover everything. Marine Corps brass resisted standardization, spare parts logistics, procurement oversight. But the folklore was already written. When modern military tools failed, sometimes old ones still worked. Hathcock noticed the attention and hated it. He'd done his job. Same as always. Now people ask questions he didn't want to answer. Questions about luck, about knowing the future, about impossible shots. Luck had nothing to do with it. At Firebase Alpine, where Hathcock was stationed between missions, he showed Davies the secret in his hooch, a sandbagged bunker with plywood floor and Coleman lanterns smelling of kerosene. Sierra Match King 168 grain hollow point, he said, holding a bullet to the light. Army marksmanship unit uses these. I buy them mail order, pay myself. He demonstrated the powder scale measuring charges within 1/10 grain. The sizing die reshaping fired brass to exact dimensions. The seating die positioning each bullet precisely 0.0010 inch off the rifling lands, close enough for maximum accuracy, far enough to avoid pressure spikes. Each round takes about 4 minutes to build. I make maybe 50 at a time. Test 5 to confirm they're shooting true, then load the rest. On Route 9, I was shooting rounds I made in December. Davies watched the process with something close to awe. The armourer know you're doing this. He knows. Doesn't like it, but he knows. Regs say use M72 ball ammunition, 173 grain full metal jacket. Good enough for the M40, but Quiet Horizon likes the 168s better. Tighter groups, better ballistics, more predictable wind drift. The secret wasn't really secret. It was an open acknowledgement that precision sometimes required breaking rules. The military wanted standardization because it was scalable, controllable, auditable, but Hathcock wasn't trying to arm a division. He was making sure that when he pulled the trigger at 470 meters with 200 lives hanging in the balance, the bullet went exactly where he aimed it. That required craft, not compliance. Later that week, Lieutenant Brennan visited seeking tactical assessment. NVA supply route, well defended, 3 enemy snipers. Patrols taking casualties before even making contact. You want me to counter-snipe? Is it possible? Hathcock studied the map, then the actual terrain through binoculars. Possible, but not with standard tactics. What do you need? Time, patience, permission to do it my way. Brennan's orders probably said coordinate with battalion, follow proper command structure, but his Marines were dying. 3 days. After that, battalion sending in a company sweep, whether you've cleared those snipers or not. 3 days is enough. Part 5. The counter-sniper operation took 71 hours from insertion to extraction. Hathcock moved alone. Davies stayed back because 2 men made twice the noise and half the invisibility. First day, he just watched how the NVA snipers moved between positions, their timing, their patterns, their discipline. Second day, he found their weakness. They rotated positions every 4 hours, and during rotation there was a 17-minute window when one sector went unwatched. 17 minutes when a patient man with a quiet rifle could move into a position they'd never expect. Dawn, day 3. He took the first NVA sniper at 300 meters, single-shot the others never heard, because the sound bounced off valley walls and became just another echo. The second sniper, cautious and experienced, took 9 more hours of waiting. The third never knew Hathcock was there until it was too late. When Hathcock returned to Firebase Alpine, Brennan was waiting with a field report for battalion. How many? 3 confirmed. Routes clear. Brennan looked at him for a long moment. The manual says that operation should have required a platoon, 2 days of artillery prep, and close air support. Yes, sir. You did it in 3 days with 4 rounds. Yes, sir. How? The question nobody wanted to ask directly, because the answer made the entire military procurement and training system look like expensive theatre for what one skilled man with an obsolete rifle could do better. Hathcock sat on an ammunition crate, quiet horizon resting across his knees, and gave the honest answer. Sir, that rifle and me, we're not following doctrine because doctrine was written for average Marines with average skills using average equipment. But I'm not average, and this rifle isn't average, and the situations I'm being sent into aren't average, so I use what works. Even when it violates regulations, especially then, because regulations are designed for supply chains and logistics officers who need to outfit an entire corps. I don't need to outfit a corps, I just need one rifle that I trust completely. Brennan was silent, wrestling with the same question Thorson had faced on Route 9. If you admit that individual craft works better than institutional systems, what does that say about the systems? The real secret, the one buried in after-action reports and never making it into official doctrine, was that Quiet Horizon represented a philosophy the modern military couldn't accept. The Winchester Model 70 was a 1936 hunting rifle built on principles of accuracy and reliability that predated every lesson the military had learned about mass warfare. It had no automatic fire, no quick-change barrel, no compatibility with supply systems. Just a rifle that shot exactly where you pointed it every single time if you did your part. And doing your part meant understanding that rifle at a level the military couldn't teach. It meant knowing that the 30-06 cartridge, developed in 1906 and considered obsolete by 1967 standards, still delivered enough energy and accuracy at long range to outperform newer designs if you loaded it right. It meant trusting your hands more than the manual, your judgment more than regulations, your eyes more than scope markings. Hathcock showed Brennan his logbook, every shot fired with Quiet Horizon in combat. Range, wind, temperature, ammunition lot number, result. 93 confirmed kills. 0 misses when it counted. That's the secret, sir. Not the rifle. The relationship with the rifle. I know what it'll do because I've done it 1,000 times. I trust it because it's never lied to me. And that trust makes the difference between a good shot and a dead enemy sniper at 300 meters. Part 6. Captain Thorson filed 3 recommendations in the months after Route 9. The first was a Bronze Star with Valor for Hathcock, approved without comment. The second was a suggestion that Scout sniper training include instruction on alternative rifle platforms and hand-loading techniques, denied due to logistics constraints and standardization requirements. The third was a request to study whether civilian hunting rifles might offer advantages over issued M40s in specific situations. Acknowledged, then buried in a filing cabinet at Da Nang. April 1967, a colonel visiting Firebase Alpine asked to see Hathcock's rifle. He'd read the reports, seen the numbers, wanted to understand how a Winchester Model 70 was consistently outperforming the military's purpose-built system. "This is just a hunting rifle." "Yes, sir. Stock's not even fiberglass. Still wood. Walnut. Soaked in cosmoline, but it holds zero better than synthetic in humidity. Scope's not military spec." "No, sir. Unearthed 10x target. I modified the mounts myself, but the glass is clearer than anything in the supply system." The colonel handed it back, uncomfortable recognition crossing his face. "How many confirmed with this rifle?" 93, sir. "And with your issued M40? "Qualified with it. Never used it in combat." The colonel was quiet for a moment, then said something Hathcock would remember for the rest of his life. "The problem, Corporal, is that you're right. This rifle in your hands is probably the most effective sniper system in Vietnam. But we can't admit that officially, because if we do, we have to explain why we spent millions developing the M40 when a $200 hunting rifle works better. Do you understand?" "I understand, sir." "Good. Keep doing what you're doing. Just don't make us write too many reports about it." Hathcock rotated home October 1969. Quiet Horizon went with him in a hard case that smelled of gun oil and red clay, and he never fired it again. Not at a range, not at a deer, not even to confirm zero. The rifle had done its work, and some part of Hathcock understood that firing it in peacetime would diminish what it had been in war. He offered it to the Marine Corps Museum. They politely declined, already had examples of the M40, no space for non-standard equipment, so Quiet Horizon went into Hathcock's gun safe and stayed there for 34 years until his death in 1999. The rifle now rests in a private collection, woodstock still bearing faint scars from basalt and monsoon rain, Unertal Scope's reticle still calibrated to the exact atmospheric pressure of Route 9 in January 1967. Historians who examine it always ask the same question: how many lives did this thing save? The answer is unknowable, but quantifiable in pieces. 200 Marines on Route 9. However many didn't walk into NVA sniper fire on northern ridges. However many convoy drivers made it through I-Corps because the enemy learned some roads had ghosts watching them. In 2004, a Marine captain named Walsh wrote a thesis at Command and Staff College about the Route 9 engagement. His conclusion was careful, academic, and quietly devastating to institutional assumptions. Individual technical mastery with appropriate tools can achieve results doctrine-based approaches cannot replicate. However, systems are designed for average personnel, not exceptional individuals. This tension remains unresolved. Translation: we know he was right, but we can't build armies on being right. Davies became a sniper instructor at Quantico in 1972. He never mentioned Quiet Horizon by name. Regulations required teaching the M40, but sometimes told students, the manual teaches competence. That's important, but some of you will want more. You'll decide whether to trust the manual or yourself. I can only say I watched a man trust himself at 470 meters, and 200 Marines went home because of it. On Route 9, where 3 ridges converge, basalt still holds faint bipod impressions from January 1967. Jungle has reclaimed everything else, but stone remembers 2 pounds, 4 ounces on a trigger, and silence and patience and the quiet sound of doctrine learning to listen. If this story reminded you that sometimes the best solutions come from those willing to break the rules, subscribe to the channel, tell us which country you watch from, and invite someone to revisit history with us in the next story.